Hello, in this video we look at Ratana Sutta, verse 7. Ye suppayutta manasa lalhena nikkaminu gotamasasamhi te pattipatta amatang vigaiha ladha mudha nibbutim bunjamana idampi sanghe ratanam panitang etena satchena suvatti hotu. I'll read it again with the text up. Ye suppayutta manasa darlehena nikkaminu gotamasa samhi te pattipatta amatang vigaiha ladha mudha nibbutim bunjamana idampi sanghe ratanam panitang etena satchena suvatti hotu. Ye, relative pronoun who, and this is in the masculine nominative singular. Ye, who, meaning those who. As usual in Pali, you see those who are well engaged, then you go straight onto the verb are so and so. But in Pali we have ye, who, te, they, meaning those who, and then they are, and then whatever you have to say about them. So, ye, those who are suppayutta. In Sanskrit, that would be suprayukta. It's from our root yuj, to join, a very familiar root, jungere in Latin, joindre in French, from which we get join in English. Prayuj has more the meaning than of to yoke onto. You can either yoke yourself onto something, in other words, work hard at it, devote yourself to it, get on with it. Or you can also apply it to an object, meaning putting it to use. Just as from the root yuj we get yoga, so equally from prayuj we get prayoga. And in fact, in modern Hindi, prayog, remember in modern Hindi the final a isn't pronounced, it's the same as the Sanskrit word, but without the final a. Prayog, prayoga means use. Prayog karna simply means to use something. So when you're referring to, when it's referred to what a person is doing, it's either using himself well, therefore putting himself to work, getting on with the work. It suggests a consistent effort. It's so suprayukta, Pali suppayutta. I'll call up the iPad. Oops. Here we are. Suprayukta. So I'll explain. We have our root yuj. We want to make a past participle out of it, so we add ta, but you can't have yujta. Sanskrit doesn't allow it, so that becomes yukta. And in Pali, as we would expect, it becomes yutta, the kta becoming a double ta. And so pra yukta becomes in Pali payutta, and with the prefix su, well engaged. The supra, where the word stands on its own without any short vowel in front of it, the Sanskrit pr just becomes a p in Pali. With the preceding short vowel, it's able to double itself, which accounts for the suprayukta, supayutta. Manasa dalhena. Dalha means firm or steady. Manasa is the instrumental form of the consonant declension, so the stem ends in an S, manas. In Pali, that appears as mano, but it declines as a consonant stem. So you say manasa with the mind, and the locative consonantal stem ending is e. So manasi, in the mind. We see that frequently in the well-known phrase yoniso manasikarota, place well in the mind, meaning pay attention to what is being said. At Darlaha, I'll give you the, oops, iPad again. Dalha, it's the past participle from the root dri, meaning the original meaning of dri is just to hold something tight, to hold it firm. And its past participle in Sanskrit is dri plus ta, but just as you can't have yuj plus ta becomes yukta, with the dri plus ta. What most often happens in the formation of the past participle in Sanskrit from a root ending in a h is they merge into a dh. So that gives us dridha. So drehta merges and becomes dridha with the retroflex d and aspirated. Sometimes you find the same phenomenon um, with a lengthened vowel. For example, you get the root mu. That's from which we get the verbal noun moha, delusion. So mu, again, we want to add ta to mean deluded. So what happens? We get the h and the t merge together into a dh, and the vowel lengthens. You find that with several other, I don't have it in my head now, but there are other roots ending in an h where we see that same phenomenon occurring. Sometimes another change, yes, here is sah to bear, swordha, the a changes to an o there. So sahta, swordha, meaning something to bear, as in to bear suffering, to bear something patiently. So dridha. Now you will very often see in Pali that where you get a d, and the same applies to the aspirate dha, where you get a d or a dha intervocalically, that is between two vowels, it very often flips in Pali into a subdotted L. That's the retroflex L. So that's what gives us, for example, the word for deluded. In Sanskrit is mudha, but in Pali, mulha. And dridha because remember Pali does not have the subdotted r sound vowel, so that changes to one of the others, and that accounts for the expression, the word dalha. It is highly likely, I'm not sure if it's fully established yet, I would say it's very highly likely, because of the meaning of dri, meaning to hold firm. This is probably a variant root of dri, meaning to be firm, to hold, from which we get dharma. Dharma in the sense of that which is firm and strong, then it came to mean the natural law, the way things really are, and then by further extension the teaching as given by the Buddha. So yes, supayutta, those who are well engaged, manasa dalhena, firm of mind, nikkamino, free of desire, um, karma. You see, it gives you the so karma, sense pleasure or desire. The word karma itself is used both for desire and for the enjoyment of the object of desire. So nikkamino. So this is the in form. Nikkamin, one who is desireless, and um, this is the masculine nominative plural form. It would be nishkaminaha in Sanskrit and nikkamino in Pali. So I will explain the form of it with the iPad again. So we have kama, and we place in front of it the prefix nis, which depending on santi will be nis, nish, ni, or nir, depending on the following consonant. Here we've got it means nirnish. It has the meaning usually of something like out. Nikkamati, nothing with karma here. Nikkamati or nishkramati, to step out of something, often meaning just to depart from something or to go away. From the root va, to blow, we have nirvana, blowing out. Here we have um, nishkama, free of desire. By phonetic mutation, we would expect to see in Pali, because we've got the sibilant followed by a k, we would have expected to see, nik, we would have expected to see nikama with the aspiration of the k, but in fact it loses its aspiration. This is a slight anomaly, but don't worry about that. You get them. You get them in Pali. So nikama, desire free. Nikama can be used, in fact, I think would normally be used as an adjective, but also you can make an alternative form of the adjective by putting our ending in. So nikamin, one who is desire free, and that's the one that, as you know, in the nominative singular, it loses the n and that it will become nikami, and the nominative plural, nikamino. The o there reflecting, it would be nishkaminaha in Sanskrit, and the Sanskrit aha most often becomes o, final o in Pali. So nikamino. And Gautama Sasanamhi. Sasana, we've had this before, it's from the root shas, meaning to teach or to instruct. From this we get the Sanskrit shasta, meaning a teacher, one who instructs, which by regular phonetic mutation in Pali becomes satta, which we have in our Itipiso chant, satta deva manusanang, teacher of gods and men. It makes one of the ways it makes a verbal noun is by adding ana to the roots. That's where you get. That's how we get shasana, teaching or instruction in Sanskrit, and sasana in Pali. So that's what we see here. Gautama sasanamhi. Um, it could equally well have said Gohana Sasane. This is just, as we know, the alternative form of the locative Gotama Sasanamhi. So, Yesupayutta, those who are well engaged, Manasa Dalhena, with mind firm, Nikkamino, free of desire, free of kama, Gotama Sasanamhi, in the sasana, in the teaching of Gotama, in the Gotama teaching, literally. Te patipatta amatang vigaiha, ladha mudha nibbutim bunjamana. So they have te patipatta, they have attained the attainment. This would be, oops, this would be in Sanskrit, prapti prapta, in the stem form prapti prapta, which regularly um, becomes patipatta in Pali. Now, let me just enlarge this a bit in case it helps. This b here, I would have half expected to see it doubled because it's prapti prapta in Sanskrit. So I'd have expected to see patipatta. But it's not an absolute rule that that happens, and it's in many cases it's pretty much optional. I think I would have you know, half and half expected to see one form or the other here. Quite possibly the poet wanted to avoid a series of short or heavy syllables consisting of short vowel, and the patipata might have sounded a bit heavy for him, so patipata sounds a bit better. That's one explanation. Now, it's from the root up, meaning to obtain. Normally we find it with the prefix pra, so pra-up, of course, becomes pra-up. It makes its past participle in the normal way, so prapta. So prapta is that which has been obtained, or I should say, it's a past participle which normally has, which of a transitive verb has a passive meaning, obtained that which has been obtained. So prapta, Pali patta, would normally mean that which has been obtained. However, it belongs to a class of verbs where the past participle sorry, can also have an active meaning referring to somebody who has obtained. So te patipata means they are attainment attained. In other words, they are people who have attained the attainment, who've reached the goal, got what they were striving for. Te patipata. Amatang vigaiha. The root ga means to dive or to plunge. To Vigaya suggests diving in, cleaving the waters, diving deep in. So Viga. In Sanskrit, let's just call it up here in our iPad again. So root ga with vi, and in Sanskrit that becomes vigahya, having plunged in, having dived in. What happens in Pali, when you get a hya in Sanskrit, those two letters are often transposed, those two sounds are often transposed in Pali. So you see Vigaiha, that's normal. And also because it's a consonant cluster, we shorten the a from Sanskrit. So Sanskrit Vigahya, Pali Vigaiha, same word. So having plunged into the, I'll give you the, having plunged, amatang vigaiha, having plunged into the immortal, dived deep into the immortal. Um, Treat this amatang, the immortal, as an accusative of motion, because diving in would be treated as a verb of motion. Therefore, what you dive into will be treated as the object of motion. Therefore, it takes the accusative. So, amatang vigaiha, having dived into the immortal. Ladha mudha nibbuting bhunjamana. A moment ago, I was telling you about patta, which has both a passive and an active meaning, that which has been obtained and describing somebody who has obtained. Ladha is actually a very similar word. It's from the root, lab, lab meaning to get, to obtain. Pretty much the same meaning as ap and prap. And it makes its past participle ad ta. Now, by regular internal sandhi in Sanskrit, where you get a root ending in a b followed by a suffix in a t, what happens is lab dha. And you get the same phenomenon, for example, lubdha. It's a regular phonetic mutation within Sanskrit by internal sandhi. Now, labdha becomes ladha in Pali, and indeed lubdha becomes ludha. Ludha, by the way, is also another of those verbs where the past participle can have both an active and a passive meaning. So lub, which is cognate with our English word love, actually, but it's in Pali, as we know, it's lobha dosa moha. It's treated as greed, excessive desire, unwholesome, unskillful desire. So it's lub. Um, and something can be luddha, meaning something which is desired, as a normal passive participle would be. It can also refer to a person in a state of desiring. Here's luddha, kama luddha, a person who's desirous of the pleasures of the senses would be kama luddha. And indeed, a kama luddha would be somebody who's obtained satisfaction of the pleasures of the senses. So here, um, sorry, I've been writing all the time on my iPad without without showing it to you. Had you seen Ga Vigaiha? Anyway, sorry, here we are. So lab plus ta makes labdha, Pali ladha. Lub plus ta similarly becomes lubdha, and Pali luddha. Uh, where was I now? So they are ladha. They have obtained. Buddha is a word in Sanskrit. It means more uselessly or in vain, whereas in Pali the meaning is rather, free of charge, without any effort. Um, how have I translated it here? Free of charge, gratis. Yeah. So if you do give somebody without charging anything, you do it mudha. Nibbutim bhunjamana. Now, nibbuti, I've done a note on it in the explanatory glossary. You can refer to that for the detail. But essentially, it's from the Sanskrit nivri, vri in its meaning of covering or blocking something off. And if you are nivrita, you are blocked off, but in a good sense, means you've blocked off all negative influences, all sense desires, and it's at a state of peace and rest, state of bliss. It's used in that word, in that sense also, for example, in Shantideva's Bodhicharya Avatara. Um, so Nibbutta is a person who is in that state, and Nibbutti, with the verbal noun ending ti, um, is the verbal noun. Now, by a common error, and because of the overlap in meaning, the semantic overlap between those words within Pali, and I think it's right to say in Sanskrit to a certain extent too, that Nibbutta came to be treated as the past participle of Nibbana. In fact, it's not. The strictly speaking, past participle of Nirva is Nirvata, and in Pali would be Nibbata. However, the word Nibbutta as the past participle, Nibbuti as the verbal noun, has come to be taken to stand as the past participle and alternative verbal noun of Nibbana. So remember that it has in Sanskrit originally had that meaning of at peace, at rest, in a state of bliss, and then by incorrect popular etymology came to be treated as deriving from the verb nirva, which it doesn't. So they have obtained nibbuti, bunjamana, enjoying. Now, as for the syntax of these words, ladha nibbutim bunjamana, I have interpreted this as being they have obtained and are enjoying nibbuti. Um, you could express it as ladha nibbutim bunjamanacha, or ladha bunjamanacha nibbuting, or nibbutim ladha bunjamanacha. So I think that these two adjectives, ladha bunjamana, obtain or got, one who has got, and bunjamana, enjoying, are to be treated as in apposition. Just you could have put an and there, but the and has just been missed out, which often happens. And I've lost my text boxes again. Sorry, it's so frequently happening. Borders, all borders, come on, all borders back. Borders, all borders. Here we are. So Bunjamana from the root bhuj, which is one of those ones that inserts a nasal in certain parts of the verb, bhuj bunj, treat them as the same word, meaning to enjoy. It's where we get, for example, the word just as yuj yoga, bhuj gives us bhoga, so bhoga means enjoyment, sometimes construed with the verbal prefix sambhoga, enjoyment. In the Mahayana, you have the sambhoga kaya, literally the enjoyment body or the fruition body. So they here just ladhamudha nibbutim punjamana, they have obtained and are enjoying mudha, free of cost, nibbutim, there's nirvana or the state of peace and rest. So I will read this out once more. Ye, and of course, sorry, and the last line is as in the other ones. Here is the Ratanam Panitang. Here is this exquisite jewel in Sanghe, in the Sangha. Etena Sachena Suvatihutu. By this truth, may there be well-being. So, Ye Supayutta Manasa Dalhena Nikkaminogo Tamasa Samhi. Te pattipata amatang vigaiha ladha mudha nimbuting bunjamana idampi sanghe ratanam panitang etena satchena suvatyuhutu. So before we wind up, I should just delete these full stops that got in. There we are. I'll read it once more. Ye suppayutta manasa dallihena nikkamino gotamasasanamihi te pattipatta amatang vigaiha ladha mudha nibbuting bhunjamana idambi sanghe ratanam panitang etena satchena suvattivutu. One thing I forgot to mention, bhunjamana, in from bhuj bhunj, you can have the present participle bhunjan, or bhunjanto, bhunjanta as present participles. Also, you can have the present participle ending in mana. So bhunjamana and bhujanta, bhunjanta mean exactly the same thing. In Sanskrit, there is a clear differentiation between the present participles ending in the ant stem, which is for the parasmaipada verbs, and mana, which is for atmanepada, forms atmanepada and passive. And that distinction is carefully observed in Sanskrit. In Pali, it's the ending mana is, I think it's true to say, pretty much always allowed instead of the what would in Sanskrit be the parasmaipada, the active form of the past participle ending in stem ant. In Sanskrit, as I say, they're delimited. It would be wrong to use one in the wrong place. In Pali, they're indiscriminately used, and as far as I can see, there's no distinction of meaning between them. Say that it might just be that there could be a residual sense that the mana ending, being atmanepada, a reflexive, therefore has the idea of doing it to or for oneself. But I say that's just a feeling I have. It doesn't seriously affect the meaning, particularly when we're transposing it into English. So there we are. That's it for this video.